All right, so everybody that's listening, if you're listening to us on one of the 25 radio stations around the country that will be airing this interview, we are thankful that you keep listening and thankful that you're listening today because we have a very exciting interview. If you're listening to us on one of the podcasting sites, like, subscribe, and definitely share. We have a great guest on. She has just written a book. It came out in May, but it's still brand new. We hope people go out and get the book. It is The Soros Agenda by Dr. Rachel Ehrenfeld. Doc, thanks so much for coming on. Greatly appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this before we even start off the interview, because I've done a lot of research on you, but maybe the people listening or watching this may have heard about you for the first time. Can you introduce yourself a little bit more to the audience?
They can go to my website, American Center for Democracy, acdemocracy.org, and they can read about my background. They can have information about, I have more than 1,500 publications,
Wow.
including books. Everything is listed there. It's acdemocracy.org, including the latest book, The Soros Agenda, and articles about what can we do, for example, to vet migrants. So that if you, well, we don't want illegal migrants, but since we have many of them, how can we actually decide who are good people that we can actually live here and who do we need to deport? There is technology that can actually do that very fast. So, for example, that's the latest article. And there are many articles about political Islam and about the radical left, you name it. It's a very informative website. And there is also information about where the book can be bought. I am an expert on terrorism, narco-terrorism, corruption, weapons of mass effect, which means including disinformation, propaganda, and other lovely issues. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, you brought up so many points. I know we do want to get into the book, but there are some points that you just brought up that I definitely want to get into the interview. But let's start with the book. So obviously, a lot of our listeners and viewers will know who George Soros is, but they don't really know the man behind the curtain. Obviously, that's what the book is about. Can you tell us a little bit of a synopsis about who George Soros really is behind that curtain?
Actually, there is another book that came out last year or something about, called the Man Behind the Curtain. It's also about Soros, and I didn't write that. I wrote about the Soros Agenda. That's the title of my book. And this is not a biography of Soros, so I had no intention of doing that.
Sure.
The book focuses on it because it would be impossible to actually get all the information that you need to write something like that.
Right.
But the book focuses on the United States, and I thought that it would be very important for people. It's not only the United States, and it's only about 100 pages of text. The rest, which is more than 150 pages, includes references and citations and stuff like that. The book has been vetted thoroughly, and what I did in the book, I'm actually citing Soros. Here's what Soros said. Now, okay, so let's see what he has done. Where are we with it? So since we live in, we are talking now in the United States, we live here, and we have tremendous rise in crime, drug trafficking, drug abuse, drug addiction, a lot of millions and millions of illegal migrants, and inflation and racial division and racial discrimination, actually, following that. A lot of chaos in the country. And I am showing in the book how, to what extent Soros, and people really sort of don't really know that, don't know the extent to which Soros is responsible for what is happening here in the United States. And they should know, because going for contributing money to any organization is important to find out if that organization is somehow connected with Soros uh, or with the left, because he and left organizations very often use Orwellian language. So they claim, like he calls his organization Open Society Foundations, and what his foundations have been doing is really doing everything in order to prevent individual freedom and really to subvert the Constitution of the United States and fight against capitalism, among other things. So it's very important to pay attention to the language. The book really lays out how he started his charitable organization. It's not charitable, and he said actually that he does not believe in charity. What he does is political. And so all the money that he is donating and has donated goes straight to politics. And that kind of a little bit violates actually the laws, because according to the IRS, you cannot, if you have a charitable organization, you are not supposed to deal with politics. Okay? Right. But that's really all they do. Yet they are still available, and I mean, they are very, very active, and they have been really funding not only Kamala Harris for many, many years, and other far left, radical left, progressive organizations, but also demonstrators that we see on the streets everywhere in America, at the universities, the pro-Hamas demonstrations, the anti-Israel demonstrations, including directly and indirectly designated Palestinian terrorist organizations. So I don't name everybody. It's impossible to name everybody because we don't know actually how large is his net, his web. But there is enough in order to point out what the scope is and how dangerous it is.
Sorry to interject. Can we dive a little deeper into, because when I personally think of George Soros, I think about the district attorney issue. He funded a lot of these liberal district attorneys in cities around the country. Obviously, after that, it seemed like, obviously 2020 happened with the coronavirus. We had the BLM riots, where a lot of these district attorneys let a lot of the rioters run rabid. They didn't go to prison. If they went in the door and right out. Is that part of the agenda? And besides that, how does that play into the bigger globalist agenda? Because there's people besides Soros, as you know, that are really prompting this. WEF, WHO, UN, the list goes on and on. Go ahead, Doc.
He's working with all of them, including the State Department. So all the money that he's spending is not only his money. There is a lot of USAID money and other American taxpayer money that goes to fund these activities, and has been. And he works with all international NGOs. It fits into it because when Soros started here, he said he wanted to change the United States. Well, he succeeded. So in the book, I describe how the plans have developed and what kind of strategies and tactics he used in order to implement them. For example, he really set out initially, or as the first objectives were to change the criminal legal system in the United States. He didn't go to Congress to lobby Congress, no. He went to states and started changing the reality on the ground. So the first thing he started was legalizing drugs. And he went and he worked in different states. And today, see big cities, see spent millions and millions of dollars in order to initially wanted to legalize all drugs, and we are close to that today. But
They've
then,
done that in Oregon, I believe.
yeah, but if you are using drugs anywhere today, heroin or cocaine or whatever, you go to some shooting galleries if you want, and they will give you needles and they will explain, and they will help you actually to take more drugs. There is nothing about education and any incentives to stop using drugs, because they are allowing you and giving you more drugs, and the more they do it, other people join too, because a lot of it is really a social event, if you want. And despite the fact that they give the needles, they go around and they share needles. So this whole experiment is terrible, and it's destroying society. But he wanted to do it. When he first started with it, he wanted to see how far can he actually push Americans in order to change their values, and to what extent can he actually change the laws without people protesting against it. So he was very successful in doing that by helping to also, besides having campaigns, not only for drug legalization, but also for illegal migration, starting 1995. He worked locally with the illegal migration. He started by providing legal aid, helping to provide legal aid for illegal migrants, and funding also all kinds of NGOs that would help illegal migration and incentivize foreigners to come here. So this has been going on for a very long time. When I paid first attention to his activities, I wrote back in 1995, 96 that unless challenged, Soros will be able to change the political landscape of the United States. Yeah. That early. I didn't have any really any way to know that, but looking at his activities, I understood immediately where he was going. And I wrote about it since many times. I showed how he's operating. I showed what the agenda was together. For example, when the Obama healthcare, they also, at the same time that Obama came out with his healthcare programs, he actually, the government, NIDA, the National Institute of Drugs, issued, for example, a call for proposals for growing marijuana and distributing marijuana cigarettes. So I looked at it and I said, well, that's really interesting. And nobody but me had written about it. I said, well, this will be part of the new medical treatments that will be available to Americans. They can use marijuana. And today, actually, the so-called medical marijuana, which there is really no such a thing as medical marijuana, the FDA to date has approved only 4 medicines that have been produced from the cannabinoid marijuana ingredients. Only 4. The rest of it, what is being sold everywhere and making a lot of money to investors, and sometimes some money to local governments because of the taxes. But much of it is actually done illegally. But that is what people are taking is really can be very dangerous. Children that use it are affected with psychosis, and actually older people too. It affects the brain, it affects the whole body. You can get all kinds of illnesses, and it can even affect your genes. So this is, for example, one of it. So you say why they are interested in it. Because if you have a population that is dependent on drugs, they are doped, really, a doped population is easy to dupe.
Yeah.
And when people are dependent on you, well, okay, so for drugs, etc., welfare, you get to where you are today, and even worse. So these are a few examples.
Doc, I want to ask you this question because it seems like from what you're explaining to us, listening, that this is kind of like a domino effect. It starts off with the migration, goes into the drugs, then we have the COVID-19 epidemic, and
You have many years in between. The
sure,
whole talk, they first started the drugs actually, and which was part of changing the criminal legal system.
okay.
So it's not only prosecutors and judges that are being elected. The Soros organization, and when Soros funds something, others follow. So he's kind of the head of the spear. The Anybody running for election who is a Democrat uh, can be funded and will be funded by Soros if the Soros organization thinks that they are woke enough. So this is really what is happening throughout the country.
So let's kind of gear to the globalist agenda right now, because we hear a lot of these organizations. Specifically, I personally, and I know a lot of people woke up during COVID to see what is really going on in the country, not to mention around the world too, because a lot of this stuff, as far as people revolting against the globalist agenda, is happening around the world. We see this in England right now. We see this in France with Le Pen. We see this in America with Donald Trump. So, but we still have a lot of problems because they are pushing the population control with the transgenderism, with the climate change, pushing people to eat bugs, buying up the farmland, contaminating the food, and obviously the big pharma issue. What?
Okay, so you laid out everything. So I mean, almost everything. There are many issues. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they are doing. They want to control the population. So,
Okay.
for example, Kamala Harris's newly selected
Vice President.
vice president, proposed vice president,
Yeah.
is uh, is very radical, and he actually signed legislation that allows abortion after the baby was born.
Yeah.
In my book, it's murder. Okay,
Right.
but there you go. That's it. It's a murder. But it's allowed and actually preferred in Minnesota when pregnant women are involved and they have some problems. Instead of offering all kind of help, they are sent to abort.
But how are people so brainwashed, Doc, now? Because, you go back into maybe the 70s, the 80s, people saw what, we're talking about, and they said, yes, that's a murder. Now it seems like a lot of people, it just doesn't faze them. It's okay, whatever.
One of my expertise is identifying and looking into weapons of mass control.
So this is
Okay,
like fifth
weapons
generation
of mass
warfare.
weapons of mass effect,
Okay.
and controlling the population, propaganda, brainwashing is part of what they do. I suggest to your readers not only to read my book, but to read Orwell's book, 1984.
Right.
He described it very, very vividly, and this is what true communism does. And this is really on a neo-communist regime that they are trying really to impose everywhere. Now, America is the major, like for Iran, America is the big Satan, and Israel is the small Satan, right?
Mhm.
So, similarly, for the globalist, America is a big Satan, if you want, That's the target to destroy, because this is the only constitutional republic that really was created to allow freedom of religion, individual freedom, and capitalism and democracy in the country. And that's a big no-no. They want to control everything. You're not supposed to have any freedom. You are supposed to do what they want. So if you look at the employment statistics in the United States, which is the number since the Biden administration came in, the figures are not very reliable. But at any event, you will see that there are more government jobs than growth of government jobs and not of the private sector, because they want everybody to be dependent on the government. So, and they will dictate what you do and what you don't do. And also there is a huge increase on NGOs, not-for-profit organizations. Okay, so who is funding it? Our money, but you know, how much money can you print? Eventually you run out of money. So they are using our tax money to pay for all kind of promotions of agendas that we are against and we don't care much about. So to destroy the family, no religion, only what they tell you is they're the new religion. And you have to adhere to that. And if you don't, and if you try to protest, then you are put in some list if you write an email or go on social media or try to publish something. I mean, you know, you are banned, you are canceled. So this is how things look now. And in order to, I think the coming elections are very, very important, because our freedom, our individual freedom, our national security, our economy is really dependent on not voting Democrat.
Yeah. That's the way it is right now. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I want to continue on about this because we do want to touch on the Middle East and also touch on immigration. Just since we already touched a little bit on immigration in general, what is the objective to letting all these migrants in? Because we heard U.S. Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois say that obviously all these people in the military had to get the jab due to coronavirus, and a lot of those men and women got sick. They had to retire. He's saying that they need those immigrants to go into the military and fight, which is how Rome
I mean,
fell.
this is really, this is the most idiotic things, I think, one of the most idiotic things I've heard for a long time. Okay, so in Austria, just today, huge concerts were canceled, right?
Right.
Britney Spears concerts were canceled because of security reasons, because there were threats from ISIS, and they caught some terrorists with weapons, with chemicals to produce bombs, whatever, ISIS pamphlet, etc. So one of these terrorists had connections to the security. They had friends who worked in the security that was supposed to secure the concert venues, okay? Wonderful. You want to secure the United States. Bring in Islamists who vowed really to kill as many infidels, as many Christians and Jews and Buddhists and you name it. And well, that will be nice. And this is really stupid.
Yeah. Well, they're already in the country. They're gone. They're in the country and they're nowhere to be found. It just seems like it's
they can be found, and I'm sure that different localities know where the people are.
Does this remind you, though, Doc, of 9/11 when all these terrorists got into the country And they were
They got
just,
in. Hey, they got in with a visa. They didn't
yeah,
smuggle themselves into the country.
that's true. Yeah.
They got in legally, but they were not vetted properly. So this is why, for example, I wrote this article about what can you do in order to properly vet people who are coming in legally or illegally.
Yeah.
But there should be. This is terrible. The major, as far as I understand, the major agenda for the Democrats was really to have enough people who would vote for them.
Yeah.
So they are giving them driving license so they can show the driving license and go and vote. This is awful. And not to speak of the fact that you and I and other taxpayers are funding their flights into the United States very often, secret flights, transportation in the country, their cell phones, their hotels, their clothing, their health care, their children's health care, their food. I mean, what is this? And many actually the people who are the most who most suffer from this are really the poor and color communities. So this is absolutely terrible.
Again, for people listening, the Soros agenda, definitely go and buy the book. Doc, I want to move into the second part of the interview and talk about Middle East issues. Obviously, Israel, Palestine, that fight is continuing on. Iran looks like they're going to definitely get in. Lebanon, there's an issue there now. It seems like the whole Middle East is up in smoke right now. And the U.S., under the Biden regime, doesn't really know what the hell to do in plain English. I hate to terminate it, use that
They know
terminology. Go
they
ahead.
know what to do. They don't want to do it.
That's fair. Very good. It's fair.
So, as Obama said, when Obama was elected and went around, actually, even before he was elected, in his inauguration speech, and then in his first a speech to the nation, and then he went on a tour in the Middle East, apologizing for alleged or supposed American sins. This was to the Islamic world. So this has been going on for a long time. It actually, we had some period of really that did not endorse that. That was the Trump administration, the first Trump administration. The Biden administration is completely pro-Iran, pro-Hamas. I mean, Kamala Harris has been, she even visited, as a senator, she visited, when she visited Israel, she visited also some Palestinian territories. And she went to, by the way, there is no such a thing as Palestine. Palestine is, yeah, there is a thing, the British call the area Palestine, but there is no such a state. So she went to visit the Al-Quds Bard University. So Soros actually has been funding that university and has been funding he has, I don't know how many universities that he is funding. We look only at what the Chinese are funding and what the Qatar is funding, and somehow we are overlooking the fact that Soros has been funding many universities in this country and many universities in other countries. And the agenda there and what they are teaching in the curriculum is
Right.
completely his agenda. So, and this is endorsing, so going to Al-Quds University, which is a Hamas fiefdom, I mean, this has been going on for a long time. People don't know. This is why it's important to read the book to see how things actually happened, what was the agenda, how it contributed to the really chaos in the United States today, and domestic and foreign national security threats, and weakening of the United States power in the world. And it's very important. Why? Because if you can identify the steps and you can identify the picture, you can look around you and say, well, okay, so these and these people are doing the same thing, so we are not going to vote for them, okay? And these people that you can identify are Democrats.
Yeah, no, listen, it's really sad what's going on in this country. And, I'll tell you, I got out of college in 2012. That was the last time I was in there. I did my master's degree, and I was very far to the left, Doc. And it took until 2021 and the COVID fiasco for me to wake up and see really what the heck is going on in the country. A lot of brainwashing in the colleges by the professors. As you stated, it seems like it doesn't really matter where you go, you are going to face that brainwashing, whatever college you go to for the most part.
So you need ammunition. You need
Right.
something to open your eyes, and these are all facts. I didn't make up anything.
Right.
I only took what Soros says and how Soros operated. And many of the high officials in the Biden administration are linked to Soros and his different foundations. So it's very important. And as we know, Mr. Biden is really not running the country. Who is running the country? Well, those officials that are connected with Soros. This should worry everybody. And I know he's not described as enemy number one, and he's not the only one who is funding these things, but he was a major component in developing this ideology and implementing it in this country.
Who is more, this is an audience question, so I do want to get this in as far as the audience question that we got from people listening. Who's more dangerous to the country and the world, Soros or Bill Gates? Or both the same, maybe?
Soros by far.
Really? Okay.
Bill Gates has money, and he spends it on all kind of things, and not necessarily for the benefit of Americans and in the United States, but actually affecting your brain. Brainwashing you is much worse than anything else, because if your brain is washed, you don't recognize the dangers that may be developed by whatever others are doing. That's it. The propaganda and the drugs are actually doping people so they can be duped.
How does Alex Soros fit into this, George Soros' son?
He's running the organization now, so his father will be 94 on
Right.
12th of August. So he's no longer running the organization. He's not been seen in public for a while. His son, since June last year, has been running the organization, and he's very close to Kamala Harris. There are many photos with her and posting by him of together with Kamala. So that this is, and they are throwing a lot of money into that. So this is not good. He has a war chest of more than $25 billion. That's a lot of money.
So this is going to continue on even if George Soros passes away, even with his son.
Yeah, it's already continuing, but it's a big organization, and the people who are working in this organization are running it, because he's the head, but he's not the. There are many other people who are
The brains.
working daily. They are not friends of the constitutional republic, democratic capitalistic system of the United States. No.
So, last question. How do Americans change this? Again, you said they're fighting against.
They don't vote in this coming election. They don't vote for a Democrat in any position, period. Not in the city, not in the town, not in schools, not in the state, not nationally. Really, this is so important, and it's not because I think that the Republicans are wonderful. They don't want to destroy this country, okay? And that's very important. And they want the United States to return to be the superpower in the world because there will be much more peace in the world and less wars if the United States is the superpower.
I agree. And Donald Trump is committed to not go into wars, whereas Kamala Harris, I'm afraid, if she gets in there, there's going to be a lot more wars than there are now, and it's
Well,
really scary.
she already stated that she will embargo any weapons going to Israel. So she is willing to let the Jewish state be destroyed by Iran. So I
You know,
mean, this is not good.
you have a lot of experience on, terrorism. Are you worried that, and I know I said last question, but I want to ask you this because you have the knowledge on this. Are you worried that a Kamala Harris presidency will have a World War III incorporated in it?
Yeah, I hope we will not get there before.
Yeah. I'm worried that they could do it and then Trump wins and they do it before he even gets
I'm
in.
worried. I'm worried. I'm worried every day.
Yeah,
Between now and hopefully the next Trump administration. But I'm worried.
right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll end there. Dr. Rachel, I appreciate you coming on. I do want to ask you one more
One
question.
second.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We can edit around that. I'll start over. We'll edit around that. Again, Dr. Rachel, I thank you for coming on. Again, the Soros Agenda. Definitely buy the book, The Soros Agenda. Buy it before the election. We need people
Right
to read
now.
this book. Yeah, buy it ASAP.
And
ASAP.
go on
Right.
acdemocracy.org, and you will have your eyes a little bit open, and you will obtain a lot of very good information.
I really hope that you woke up some people's eyes, even if it's five, if it's one, if it's two, the more we can get, the better off. You are such a valuable resource to the program, Dr. Rachel. I'm so happy you came on, and I look forward to having another conversation with you again in the future. Again, the Soros Agenda. Go out and buy it. Thanks so much, Dr. Rachel. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.